नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरयेत्। यस्वानुभावम् अखिलश्रुतिसारमेकम् अध्यात्मदीपम् अतितितीर्षतां तमोऽन्तम् संसारिणां करुणयाः पुराणगुह्यम् तं व्याससूनुमुपयामि गुरुं मुनीनाम्। मेनिरे भगवद्रूपं शास्त्रं भागवतं कलौ पठनात् श्रवणात् सद्यः वैकुंठ फलदायकम्। श्रीमद्भागवतं पुराणं नाम लोकविश्रुतं शृणुयात् श्रद्धया युक्तः मम सन्तोषकारणम्। निगमकल्पतरोर्गलितं फलं सुखमुखात् अमृतद्रवसंयुतं पिबत भागवतं रसमालयम् मुहुरहो रसिका भुवि भावुकाः। Srimad-Bhagavatam, which is the very essence of all Vedas and Vedanta, begins gloriously. The very first skanda of Srimad-Bhagavatam captures the context, the advent of Bhagavatam, when Parikshit Maharaj addresses Shukha Brahma on how to prepare for death. Thus begins this Mahapurana dramatically in response to Parikshit's question on how to prepare for death. Shukha begins his brilliant exposition. Shukha's response to Parikshit forms the core of Srimad Bhagavatam. In the second skanda of Srimad Bhagavatam, we get to relish Shukha's instructions to Parikshit. His instructions on the various sadhanas for moksha. In the process, we also get to relish the summary of all the avatars of Bhagavan. Chatushloki Bhagavatam is a brilliant gem that is covered in the second skanda. The third skanda of Bhagavatam is primarily devoted to the topics around Sarga, creation, division of time. And these topics are covered as part of the conversation between Vidura and Maitreya. Vidura Maitreya Samvada gives us several gems. Varaha is the crest jewel of this skanda. And Kapilopadesha happens to be another priceless gem of the third skanda. The fourth skanda revolves around Dhruva Charitra. And we get to relish Dhruva Stuti. While the first skanda presents Kunti Stuti and Bhishma Stuti, the fourth skanda presents the equally brilliant Dhruva Stuti. The fourth skanda also covers the lineage of Uttanapada. Swayambhuva Manu had two sons, Priyavrata, Uttanapada. The fourth skanda covers the lineage of Uttanapada, and it is in that context it covers Dhruva Charitra. and also Prithu Charitra. And we get to relish the glorious avatara of Prithu. Having completed 4 skandhas of Srimad Bhagavatam, we will now begin the 5th skandha. In the 5th skandha of Srimad Bhagavatam, we will get to know the lineage of Priyavrata. Also, the 5th skandha of Bhagavatam gives us insights into Vedic geography and Vedic astronomy. In the context of presenting the lineage of Priyavrata, the 5th skandha also celebrates another glorious avatara of Narayana, the avatara of Rishabha. Not very popular, but very interesting. Priyavrata, the other son of Swayambhuva Manu, married Barihishmati, the daughter of Vishwakarma. And Priyavrata was blessed with 10 sons and 2 daughters. 3 sons out of the 10 decided to adopt the sannyasa marga, and they retired from the kingdom. And Priyavrata then decided to divide Bhuloka. Priyavrata, who was ruling Bhuloka, decided to divide Bhuloka into 7 divisions, 7 dvipas, in order to allot 1 dvipa to each of his sons so that they can rule each of these dvipas. Bhuloka was divided into 7 dvipas by Priyavrata. Jambudvipa, Lakshadvipa, Kushadvipa, Shalmadvipa, Krauchadvipa, Shakadvipa, Pushkaradvipa. Geology talks about how Earth was over several centuries, over several time periods. The solid crust of Earth is actually broken down into several plates. And geology talks about how these plates, the crust of the Earth, which are floating on liquid called magma, are constantly moving all the time. The earth plates, and this is movement of the earth plates, is called plate tectonics. And geology clearly tells us how long ago, several thousands of years back, Earth was actually one land mass. Unlike today. Today, there are several land masses spread all over the Earth. Now, when Bhagavatam talks about Priyavrata dividing Bhuloka into 7 dvipas, immediately we may jump and conclude these 7 dvipas are 7 continents. The 7 dvipas are not to be understood as the 7 continents of today's geography. We are talking about Swayambhuva Manvantara. Thousands and thousands of years back, there was one land mass, which is Jambudvipa. There were several other realms. We are talking about Bhuloka here, not just Earth, the Bhumandala. 7 realms, 7 concentric realms, 6 concentric realms surrounding the central mass, land mass, which is called Jambudvipa. Jambudvipa was handed over to the eldest son of Priyavrata, Agnidhra, a very righteous king. Agnidhra became the king of Jambudvipa. And Agnidhra started ruling Jambudvipa, and Agnidra was blessed with 9 sons. And Agnidra decided to divide Jambudvipa into 9 parts, 9 divisions. Each part was called a Varsha. Jambudvipa was divided into 9 Varshas. Nabhi Varsha, Kinnara Varsha, Hari Varsha, Kuru Varsha, Hiranmaya Varsha, Ramyaka Varsha, Ilavrita Varsha, Bhadrashva Varsha, Ketubala Varsha. These are all names of his sons. His eldest son being Nabhi, second son being Kim Purusha or Kinnara, third son being Hari, fourth son being Kuru, and so on. So every Varsha was named after his son. And these 9 parts were ruled by 9 sons of Agnidra. Nabhi ruled that part of Jambudvipa, which was then popularly called Nabhi Varsha. This is the Karma Bhumi to which all of us belong. It is this Nabhi Varsha which eventually came to be called Bharata Varsha. Originally, Bharata Varsha was called Nabhi Varsha. Who is this Bharata? Bharata is son of Rishabha, who is son of Nabhi. Nabhi's magnanimous son was Rishabha, whose illustrious son was Bharata. It is after this Bharata, Nabhi Varsha was renamed as Bharata Varsha. It is in this context of explaining the lineage of Priyavrata, Shuka also talks about the geography, the Vedan geography of Bhuloka, and he also then begins to cover the glorious avatara of Rishabha. Nabhi married Meru Devi and together performed severe austerities, worshipped Narayana. Pleased with Nabhi and Meru Devi, Narayana promised that he shall take Avatara as their son. And Bhagavan then took the Avatara as the son of Nabhi and Meru Devi. Seems when Bhagavan took the Avatara, immediately in the womb of Meru Devi, immediately everyone looking at that little child could immediately recognize that it was none other than that Parabrahman. He had all the signs of Bhagavan. They also noticed that the bottom of his feet, divine lotus feet, were all the auspicious marks of Shankha, Chakra, of Thunderbolt, of the flag, which are all the marks of Narayana. Nabhi and Meru were immensely pleased that they were none other than Narayana himself took the Avatara as their very own son. Tasyahava itham Pashmana Variyasa Brihat Shlokena Chaujasa Balena Shriya Yashasa Vidya Sauryabhyam Chapita Rishabha iti idam nama chakara. Nabhi looked at this child and he wanted to give him an appropriate name. And he chose the name Rishabha. Rishabha iti idam nama chakara. Rishabha, Chaujasa, Balena, Shriya, Yashasa, Virya, Shaurya. All noble qualities. Unparalleled, unmatchless qualities. All you could see every quality, a very beautiful form, magnetic, attractive form, with all the symptoms of godhood. Prowess, matchless prowess, strength, beauty, name, fame. Looking at all these noble qualities, immediately Nabhi decided this child has to be named Rishabha. Rishabha means the best, the supreme, one who is endowed with supreme qualities. Therefore, Rishabha, the best. The Bhagavan's avatara, therefore, he took the avatara as Rishabha. As Rishabha started growing, now he knew that there was a reason why Bhagavan took the avatara as his very own son. And Rishabha celebrated every day, looking at Rishabha growing. And Shukha tells Parikshit, Bhagavan demonstrated every day how dharma should be followed. It is said, dharma lives through those who live the dharma. Dharma lives through those who live the dharma. Shastra lives through those who live the shastra. That is why Bhagavan not only gives us the shastras, but he also takes avatars to live the shastras. Rishabha demonstrated supreme leadership qualities. Shuka immediately writes, Yachat Chirshayanya Charitam Tat Anuvartate Lokaha, he says. Krishna says the same in Gita. Yatyada Charati Sreshtaha Tattadeve Tarojanaha Sayat Pramanam Kurute Lokastadanuvartate. Yadyada Charati Sreshtaha Tattadeve Tarojanaha Sayat Pramanam Kurute Lokastadanuvartate. The Sreshtas, those who are in positions of responsibility, the leaders, it is their duty to inspire others to follow on the right path. Sayat pramanam kurute lokastadanuvartate. Whatever the leaders do, the followers follow. Therefore, those who enjoy responsibility in society, those who are in leadership positions in society, have to necessarily be very careful. That is why Krishna tells Arjuna that even if one is qualified to perform Jnana Yoga for the sake of the larger good, for the sake of the majority who cannot follow the Jnana path of Jnana Yoga, you better perform Karma Yoga so that people can easily follow you. And this is exactly what Rishabhadeva does. Yadyapi viditam shakala dharmam brahmam guhyam brahmane darshita margena samadhibir upaye janatam anushasasa. Seems Rishabhadeva was well qualified to be a Brahmana. He was endowed with all supreme wisdom, with all the Vedic knowledge. Nevertheless, he still followed, he adhered to Varnashrama Dharma. He followed the Dharma of a Kshatriya, submitted himself to the Brahmanas. He says, Dharmam Brahmam Guhyam Brahmane Dashita Margena. He allowed himself to be led. A Kshatriya, the king, even though he is the ruler, he is the decision maker, he has to be guided by the wise Brahmanas. Rishabhadeva demonstrated how to be an ideal Kshatriya, how to be an ideal king. Even though he was endowed with supreme wisdom, in order to be an ideal king, so that other kings in future can follow on the path, he demonstrated Varna Dharma. He initially practiced Brahmacharya, went to Gurukula to study the Vedas and the Vedanta, and after adopted, accepted the Grihastha Dharma, married Jayanti and had 100 sons. And as a Kshatriya, he ensured that order prevails in society. He himself followed Varnashrama Dharma and was an example for others in the kingdom to also, therefore, the entire kingdom, the whole of Bharatavarsha, the whole of Nabhivarsha, at that time, as it was called, it was before the times of Bharata, his own son. There was prosperity, there was abundance everywhere. Righteousness prevailed, order prevailed, harmony prevailed. Everyone followed their varna and their ashrama dharmas. And this was one of the primary purposes of Rishabhavatar. And Rishabha went around his kingdom, ensuring that the needs of the people are taken care of, and everyone were so very happy in the kingdom being ruled by Rishabhadeva. As was his practice, Rishabha traveled all over the world together with his sons. And it was during one of those travels, along with his sons, Rishabha reached a place called Brahmavarta. It is that in that place, there were several rishis who were performing various yajnas. And Rishabha, along with his sons, spent some time there. It is in that serene atmosphere that Rishabha decided to impart wisdom to his sons. And thus begins Rishabha's instructions, Rishabha's teachings to his sons. Rishabha imparts quintessential knowledge to his sons. This exposition of Rishabha is one of the primary topics in Skanda 5. Rishabha has a very prolonged conversation with his sons and talks on various topics. He starts with the most important topic of all topics. What is human birth meant for? Rishabha's instructions to his sons begins addressing this very question. What is human birth meant for? Nayam deho deha bhajam driloke kashtan kaman arhate vidbhujamye tapodivyam putrakayena sattvam shuddhe yasmat dhamma saukyam tvanantam. Nayam deho deha bhajam driloke. Deha bhajam driloke. Rishabha tells his sons, all the living beings, the jivas who are embodied, the various jivatmas who are embodied, who take the human form, who accept the human body. Nayam deho deha bhajam driloke. Who accept the human form and go around working very hard. Kashtan kaman arhate vidbhujamye. Go about, if they go about working very hard. Now, there are two categories of people, broadly. Those who work very hard, those who hardly work. There are only two categories. Those who work hard, those who hardly work. But what differentiates these two categories of humans, Rishabha says, from animals? Animals also either work hard or hardly work. He says, Kashtan kaman arhate vidbhujamye. They work hard for what? Purely for sense gratification. The human form is given for some other purpose and it is misused. Purely working hard for sense gratification alone, he says. Then what is the human birth meant for? Is the immediate question that is asked. If human birth is not meant for working hard to gratify the senses, what is it meant for? Rishabha beautifully presents the answer. He says, Tapodivyam putrakayena sattvam shuddhet yasmat brahma saukyam tvanantam. He says the purpose of human birth, he puts it in one word. Tapaha. He says tapas. The Upanishads declare Ritam tapaha, Satyam tapaha, Shatam tapaha, Shantam tapaha, Dhanam tapaha, Yajnam tapaha. Tapas is the crowning glory of every activity. Tapas is the crowning glory of every activity meant for liberation, meant for eternal happiness. The human form, Rishabha says, is meant for tapas. Because human form is, humans are uniquely endowed with a mind and intellect, unlike other species. And this form is so very special. It is meant for performing tapas. The moment we think of tapas, we immediately relate to various extreme examples of tapas given in our own itihasas and Puranas. Immediately, the vision of a rishi standing on one leg and performing austerities for years together without eating comes to our mind, and we think tapas is not meant for us. It is only meant for selective few. But Rishabhadeva very clearly said tapas is meant for each and every living being, every human. He says, why tapas? Tapodivyam putrakayena sattvam shuddhed yasmat brahma saukyam tvanantam. It is only through tapas the heart gets purified, leading to eternal happiness. Therefore, tapas is hard work, no doubt, but it is also heart work. It is hard work and heart work as well. The heart, the love in the heart has to be redirected through tapas to the object which is worthy of our love, which is Bhagavan. So tapas in essence is nothing but redirecting our love towards Bhagavan. It is about simplifying life. Tapas is all about simplifying life. Tapas is about conserving our energy, not wasting our energy, mental energy on things which do not lead us to eternal happiness. It is about investing our energies in activities that really bring us true fulfillment. Tapas is about the discipline to exercise our will in order for us to experience harmony, experience contentment, experience completeness. Tapas is all about recognizing life as an opportunity, as a gift, where we make a paradigm shift from my way to Krishna's way, to my design to Krishna's design. Essentially, it is about exercising my free will to recognize that my free will, my willpower is nothing but a tiny fragment of his power. Tapas is about cultivating won't power. What is won't power? Saying no to things that are unwanted. And how do I cultivate won't power? By cultivating want power, wanting Krishna more than anything else. When I cultivate my want power, my won't power automatically increases. Only through tapas, Rishabhadeva says, that one can get right direction in one's life. So therefore, he begins his exposition by basically saying human birth is meant for performing this tapas, exercising, recognizing that there is a unique power given to us, unlike other living species. And this power has to be put to right use. Tapodivyam putrakayena sattvam shuddhet yasmat brahma saukyam tvanantam. Now, as Krishna says in the Gita, jivanam sarvabhuteshu tapaschasti tapasvishu, to recognize that power of tapasya is also a manifestation of his power in us. When that recognition happens, one can effortlessly perform tapas. And it is only through tapas one can begin one's journey in the right direction. And therefore, immediately Rishabha addresses the next question. What is the first and foremost step in pursuit of truth? Because for pursuit of truth, for acquisition of wisdom, for pursuit of understanding the nature of reality, the pursuit of eternal happiness, tapas is indispensable. What is the first and foremost step in this pursuit? Rishabhadeva immediately answers this question. He says, Mahat sevam dvaramahur vimukte tamodvaram yoshitam sangi sanga mahantaste samachittaha prashanta vimanyavaha shurdaha sadvoye. So what is the first and foremost step? Again, he gives a very simple answer. He says, Mahat sevam. Mahat sevam. Seva to Mahatmas. Service to masters. Those who are spiritually evolved. Those who can lead on the right path. The Mahatmas are to be served. One must necessarily approach Mahatmas and begin to serve them. And this, Rishabhadeva says, is the very first step. The very first step to proceed in the pursuit of truth, proceed in the pursuit of eternal happiness is Mahat Seva. He says, Mahat Sevam Dvaramahur Vimuktehe Tamodvaram Yoshitam Sangi Sanga. He says there are only two ways possible. There is one way which leads us to the darkness of samsara. Tamodvaram Yoshitam Sangi Sanga, where one is pulled by destructive forces of attachment towards worldly objects. This is one way. The other way is to get out of this way, is to take the way of the great masters, the spiritual leaders. Mahat Sevam, by serving them, following the path that they show. That is the only way. By serving them, Rishabhadeva says, one can get away from taking the wrong track, the path which leads all the way to the darkness of samsara. And who are these Mahatmas? He immediately gives the answer. He says, Mahantaste samachitta prashanta vimanyavaha sugrudaha saddoye. Sadavaha sugrudaha vimanyavaha samachitta prashanta. Various characteristics of Mahatmas who need to be served, he says. Sadavaha. The Sadhava is the Jnani, the supreme Bhakta. As Brihadaranyaka Upanishad says, Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya. Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya. How to moving from darkness to light? How is it possible? Mrityorma Amritangamaya. The knowledge which matures into bhakti helps one to move from darkness to light. And it is this jnana which is ripened into bhakti, which can then move one from the mortal realm of death to the immortal realm of deathlessness. Mrityorma Amritangamaya. It is by serving those Mahatmas who are Sadavaha, true Bhaktas, the one who are endowed with wisdom, knowledge of reality, who can impart the right knowledge that one can be led from darkness to light. Suhurdaha. These are those who are well-wishers of all. Well-wishers. Why they are well-wishers? Because they are the ones who reach out to those who are stuck deeply in the dark well of samsara. The well-wisher is the one who takes the effort to pull others out of the well from from the dark well of samsara. That's why they are suhrudaha, well-wishers, true well-wishers. Vimanyavaha, those who have conquered anger. And therefore they are prashantaha, they are samachittaha, equipoised, prashantaha, very peaceful. They are those whose mind is like an ocean. Whose mind is like an ocean. They are in a state of ever flowing but never flooding. A state which is ever flowing but never flooding. Why? Because living in this material world, one cannot avoid being bombarded by external stimuli. One cannot escape. One cannot run away from the world and shut oneself up. One needs to live in this world, and when one lives in this world, one is naturally bombarded by external stimuli all the time, ever flowing. But that does not mean one should be flooded inside. Ever flowing but never flooding, which means stimuli can bombard, but the Mahatma stays calm and composed, like an ocean. All kinds of rivers can come into the ocean. Some could be pure, some could be impure. Nothing happens to the ocean. So a river can look at the ocean and say, hey, ocean, I'm not going to come and join with you, but the ocean will not be perturbed. Doesn't matter what happens externally. The ocean does not depend on the river waters to be full. It is always full, always complete. Therefore, Rishabha says, a Mahatma is one who is full, complete. The key to happiness is not with others. Otherwise, we go around distributing our keys to our happiness. Anybody and everybody can trigger our unhappiness. One who is like an ocean is the true Mahatma, and an ocean like mind. And he says, Mahat Sevam Dwaramahur Vimukte. Therefore, the path to liberation, Rishabha says, necessarily has to begin in service to these Mahatmas, he says. What is the way? What is the path that these Mahatmas show? What is the right path? Rishabha immediately answers. Rishabha says, Eva Mayishe Krita Sauhrudartha Janeshu Dehambhara Martikeshu Griheshu Jayatmaja Ratimatsu Napriti Yukta Yavadartascha Loke. What is the path shown by these Mahatmas? The path is a life where Bhagavan becomes the center. Not only that, Bhagavan being the center is very important. Bhagavan should not only be the center, he also has to be the perimeter as well. He has to be at the very core of everything, and he also has to be the boundary. What does this mean? When he is at the very center, we do everything that pleases him. At the same time, we also need to ensure that as per his guidelines, we also do not do what displeases him. That is why Bhagavan should not only be the center, he should also be the perimeter. The way we operate in our lives should be in such a way that do what pleases Krishna and avoid doing what displeases Krishna. So the path that is shown, therefore, here Rishabha says, Eva Mayi Ishe Krita Sauhrudartha. Mayi Ishe Krita Sauhrudartha. Do everything that pleases Bhagavan for his sake. Every activity to be performed, keeping him in mind all the time, and not do anything where he has no place. Every activity. Janeshu Dehambhara Vartikeshu Griheshu Jayatatmaja Ratimatsu na priti yukta. Do not do any activity where Krishna has no place. If there is no room for Krishna, then such activity is useless. Everything has to be centered around him. Every facet of life and living has to be constructed around this purposeful living. Krishna in the Gita beautifully talks about the difference, how to make the difference between materialistic living and spiritualistic living. The unwise and the wise. He says, Yanisha Sarvabhutanam. Again, one of those riddles of Krishna in the Gita. A very beautiful shloka. He says, Yanisha Sarvabhutanam Tasyam Jagrati Samyami. Yasyam Jagrati Bhutani Sanisha Pashyato Munehe. A direct translation of the shloka says, what is night for all living beings is the day for the wise. And what is day for all the living beings is night for the wise. Now here the day and night have to be understood properly. Day and night, light, day is light, night is darkness. Day is success, night is failure. For those who are immersed in worldliness, material pleasures, the definition of success in life is basically revolving around material pleasures. And for the wise, indulging that is actually failure. For those who are worldly, deprivation of worldly pleasure, materialistic pleasures is darkness, whereas that is light for the wise. Because for them, the source of pleasure is not the worldly objects, the source of pleasure is Bhagavan. Therefore, one needs to identify, differentiate between material progress and spiritual progress. The priorities, the goals, the means adopted to reach the goals, the values, the practices, the culture, the lifestyle, everything that is required for worldly success, for materialistic success, have to be transformed in order to progress spiritually. Imagine you're supposed to be heading towards the north, to a city in the north. You end up going to a bus stand and you take a bus going southwards. Your destination city is in the north. You end up taking a bus which is going south. You end up taking that bus going towards the south, but you still turning around facing the north and say, I'm still directed towards the north. Will you manage to reach your destination? Even if you stand up in the bus and start running towards the north, still the bus is still going towards the south. There is no way that that person can reach his destination. Similarly, adopting definitions that apply to material progress and trying to put them to practice for spiritual progress is going to be futile. If I do not fashion my lifestyle and my life around my spiritual priorities, if my goals, my values, my practices, my rituals, my habits, whatever that shapes the way I operate in my life, if they are all based on progress, materialistic progress, there is no way I can make any step forward spiritually. Unless each of these are transformed. So immediately one may ask this question: does this imply that we cut ourselves out off from society and stop pursuing materialistic goals? Not really. The beauty of the path of bhakti that Shastras show us is that it is so very inclusive. It can utilize the material in the pursuit of the spiritual. Utilize the material in the pursuit of the spiritual. This is what Rishabha is very clearly saying. Eva mayeshe krita saukhadate janeshu dehambara vartikeshu griheshu jayatatmaja ratimatsu na priti yukta yavadartascha loke. Yavadartascha loke. I still have to earn my livelihood. I still have to have certain comforts, materialistic comforts, which are required to make my spiritual journey more comfortable. As long as they do not pull me away from my path, it is okay to have those materialistic comforts. As long as they add to my, they make my journey a lot more comfortable, it is fine. But Rishabha is very clear here. Eva mai yeshe krita sauhudatma. Bhagavan, whatever I do should revolve around him. He has to become the very center, and not only remain the center, he also has to be the perimeter as well, because whatever I do has to be defined by his guidelines, by the Shastras that he has given us. And Rishabha says, when that happens, one starts to progress spiritually as well. Otherwise, everything that is done will only become mere rituals. One may be doing lots of things, practices which Shastras say, but they are all futile. They become mere rituals with no spiritual progress. Why? Because one applies definitions of material progress onto spiritual practices, which will be very futile. So therefore, Rishabha cautions. He tells his sons, very important to know that one should not repeat the same mistake and expect a different result. Don't repeat the same mistake. Go on repeating the same mistake and expecting different result. He says, Nunam pramatta kurute vikarmayat indriya priyata prunoti nasadu manyate yatatmanoyam asannapi kleshadasa dehaha. Very, very profound and striking message Rishabhadeva gives. Mistakes are meant for learning, not for repeating. What is this mistake he's talking of? The mistake he's talking about, he says, Nunam pramatta kurute vikarma. Pramatta, like mad people, all the jivas, like mad people are repeatedly performing kamya karma. Yad indriya pritaya aprunoti. Repeatedly performing kamya karma, repeatedly doing activities only for the sake of fulfilling bodily needs for sense gratification and accumulating karma repeatedly, knowing that they are on a path. The mistake here is chasing a goalpost which is constantly moving. In spite of knowing that this goalpost is constantly moving, we continue to chase it repeatedly. Repeatedly doing this mistake. We all know this popular story. There was this man, it seems, who was very frantically searching under a street light. Under a street light, he was going around. And there was a wise man who passed by. He asked, "What are you doing?" He said, "I'm searching for my gold ring, which I lost. And therefore, I'm searching for it." So the wise man said, I can also help you. Tell me exactly, is it this place? He said, I lost it inside my house, but my house is dark. But I'm searching here under the street light because here it is well lit. The wise man immediately recognized this man is foolish. He said, how can you search here when you have lost it elsewhere inside your room? Now, this is a very popular story, but imagine if this man not only searches for his gold ring under the street light, which he lost inside his house, which is dark on that particular day. He was searching it the previous day, the day before, the day before, the day before, and he has been searching for this every day of his life. And not only that, imagine if he's searching, doing this futile search, not every day of this lifetime, every day of his previous life, and every day of all the previous life before that. How foolish it would be. Repeatedly doing the same mistake. The fact that we are all embodied, the fact that we are all imprisoned in this body, which is a source of misery, whether we like it or not, which is constantly subject to all kinds of changes, aging, disease, death, all kinds of changes. The very fact that we are still imprisoned in this body means that we have committed several mistakes in the past. So Rishabha is asking, how can you continue to repeat the same mistakes which has brought you all the way here? If the goal is to escape from this prison, one should stop repeating the mistakes. If you repeat the mistakes, you cannot expect a different result. If the result that is expected is moksha, then do not repeat the same mistakes that you have been committing for several lifetimes before. And then he says, Parabhavastavad abhoda jataha yavan jignasata atma tattvam yavat kriyas tavadidam manovai karmatmakam yena sharira bandhaha karmatmakam yena sharira bandhaha yavan jignasata atma tattvam. Rishabha tells his sons, he says, as long as one does not inquire about the truth, as long as one does not inquire about the nature of reality, as long as one does not start asking the question, what is the purpose of this life? Jignasa. Jignasa is the very foundation. Yavan jignasata atma tattvam. If one does not start inquiry, knowing oneself, one's true nature, the nature of Bhagavan, and the relationship with him. Yavat kriyas tavadidam manovai karmatmakam yena sharira bandhaha. Now before that, he says, Parabhavastavat abhoda jataha. Yavanna jignasata atma tattvam. If one does not inquire about the truth, about the nature of reality, what happens? He says, Parabhavaha. They get defeated. One is defeated. Parabhavaha. One is defeated in this life. There can be no success. One is defeated. Parabhavas tavad abhoda jataha. One is defeated and subject to miseries caused by ignorance, he says. Yavat kriyas tavadidam manovai karmatmakam yena sharira bandhaha. One continues performing activities, accumulating karma, and one continues to stay imprisoned in samsara. Yavat kriyas tavadidam manovai karmatmakam yena sharira bandhaha. Sharira bandhaha. Repeatedly taking multiple shariras, birth after birth, birth after birth. What we really think of freedom is actually not freedom. What we think of freedom is freedom in weakness. What is freedom in weakness? Freedom in weakness is freely going about indulging in worldly activities without any restriction, without any restraint, fulfilling selfish desires, freely engaging in lower urges. That is freedom in weakness, which is actually slavery. What we think is freedom is actually slavery. We're all slaves to the worldly objects, slaves to our senses, slaves to our mind. Jnana, inquiry, the purpose of jnana is freedom from weakness. To move from a state of freedom in weakness to a state of freedom from weakness. All our weaknesses are our indriyas. Our indriyas are our weaknesses because they are designed to be constantly looking out for external stimuli all the time. And these weaknesses ensure that the love and the longing that we have are always misdirected towards the worldly objects. The love and the longing that we have naturally are misdirected towards the worldly objects. When we get freedom from weakness, we will be able to redirect that love and longing that we have from the world to the world maker, to Krishna. Purpose of inquiry, therefore, is freedom from that weakness. Yavan jijnasata atmatattvam parabhavastavad abodha jataha. Rishabhadeva says. Therefore, he says, Yavat kriyastavad idam mano vai karmatmakam yena sharira bhattaha. There is no point. There is no point in trying to think that we are really free when we are not. Recognize that we are actually slaves. Recognize that we are slaves to the world. True freedom is recognizing our slavery to the Lord. And therefore, Rishabhadeva talks about the necessity for inquiry. Necessity for inquiry about the inquiry about truth, about nature of reality. In many ways, the fifth skanda of Srimad Bhagavatam revolves around jnana, inquiry. Because what Rishabhadeva begins through his exposition on jnana, on inquiry, is further continued by his son Bharata. And Bharata, in his next birth, becomes Jadabharata. And Jadabharata, the font of wisdom, through him we also get to relish great wisdom and the power of jnana later in the fifth canto. Let us continue to contemplate on the glorious Rishabha Avatara of Narayana, where he instructs on the importance of recognizing the purpose of the human form and how to begin the pursuit of truth in service of Mahatmas. Realize the right path, the pathway to liberation, and how to fashion our life and lifestyle around Bhagavan, and how to recognize that jnana inquiry should be the fuel which should drive our journey in pursuit of eternal happiness. Rishabha's exposition will continue and we will relish it in the next session. Until then, Sarvam Sri Krishna Arpanamastu.